What is going on, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Huddle Within podcast. Once again, thank you very much for tuning into another episode where we go beyond the deeper meaning of sports and how it impacts our lives on a deeper scale. Before I begin, just wanted to shout out this beautiful club. If you are watching the video, you will see that I am wearing a Western City jersey. Western City is a elite futsal club in Victoria who I've played for in the past and is owned by a close group of friends of mine. They have a really big community. They're doing very well this season. They're currently top of the table in the Futsal League Championship, which is the one division below the top league, which is called Series Futsal. If they stay on top, they will promote to the highest level, versing the best futsal teams in the state. So shout out to them. They're big supporters of the pod. Thought I'd get straight into the topic for today. And as you can tell by the title, we're going to be looking into how sport affects mental health awareness. So obviously, I can't speak from a psychologist and give up those brain stats and education pieces, but I can definitely talk as to someone that watches sports, that also plays sports, and has also coached within sports. So, when we watch sport, we always are seeing the wins, the goals, the medals, all that surface level stuff that gets reported on throughout media and through our, podcasts we listen to, if you do listen to podcasts, or post-game shows that we watch after a match has been performed. But we never really go into what happens behind the scenes. And lately I've been thinking about the mental toll that comes with sports as I've done this podcast and as I continue to, talk about these deeper level things. I start to, think about it a lot more. And what I want to discuss is the mental toll that does actually come with sports. And it's not even just at the professional level. I can't speak from a professional player standpoint, but I can definitely speak from a place where I play, state league football, where that is quite competitive and teams are wanting to promote to higher divisions. There is a commitment to train 2 nights a week, and even other competitions such as Series Futsal, as mentioned before, but also being a fan and really immersing myself into the teams that I support and wanting them to do well. There is a lot of pressure when it comes to that, and I'm sure we may not all be able to relate to the professional level pressure, being able to perform in front of thousands and thousands of people in a stadium, but we can definitely relate to the pressure in our lives when it comes to, one, being our work and our jobs, but also through being a sports fan and someone that is playing in a mental or in a small weekend league as well, or wherever you're playing. So today's episode is not just going to be about the game-winning plays. It's going to be about the stuff that's sort of harder to talk about and stuff that is starting to get mentioned a lot more lately, but still not covered as much as our basic surface level conversations. And that is the mental side of sports. But we don't want this to be too much of a negative podcast. So first we're going to be addressing, the positive aspects and how sport is good for our mental health. So I think the first thing for me, when I go back to my experience of getting into sport, I actually never grew up in a family that was massive sports fans or lovers. I guess they appreciated the benefits of sport, but they never really got into it as I did, supporting teams and playing it as I did. So it was something that became an escape for me, and something that was able to help me go through a lot of personal issues in my life, being a kid coming through a rough childhood and, quite frankly, a divorced family. So having that opportunity to play sports at school at lunchtime made me sort of forget about the world. And from then on, it prompted me to go into Auskick, as I mentioned before, footy, being a part of a team and a community and having people that were kind of in the same position, not necessarily having the same, personal family issues, but maybe in another way, but just having the same common like and I guess strive for community. And that was what was great about the sport. So what it does for your mental health is it makes you feel that you're part of something and part of a team. It sort of became my family to me, just being able to play with my friends in these sports. You get that runner's high and that post game buzz as well, especially coming after a win. You really feel like you're on top of the world after you perform and win, compete. And you also, as if you get that runner's high. I know for a lot of guys and people and girls that do running, the feeling of finishing a run or even starting a run, while it is gruesome, you do get that high once it's done and once you've accomplished something. And I feel like that is the same kind of core things that you get from um, achieving something, whether it's a win or even in sports of running as well, getting that kind of accomplishment of finishing a race and whatnot. So that's really impactful, I feel. Routine structures and goals, I think, are also very good for the mental health. It helps people feel grounded, and it gives a sort of essential structure and rules to our life. And it's lessons that we can learn to take into our professional lives as well. Being able to attend training and work on your craft, being able to get to certain match days and trainings on time, and also sometimes an hour earlier to give you that structure and discipline. And also, there is an objective and a goal, which is something that I find extremely important. When it comes to competitiveness, there is a massive, I guess, debate when it comes to competitiveness in sports. And Australia is probably the biggest example of this. There are a lot of people that are on the side of being inclusive, encouragement, and getting everyone involved, while is others that strive for competition and want to compete. And both things have good elements to it. I can go back to a recent example where sports, it doesn't matter how good you are, there is an opportunity for you to go in and play. But if I'm being honest, the sport itself is a competition and it really sets you up for the real world. I remember back in school, when we had school sports, you would have to list down your preference of which sport you'd want to prefer, and it would be up to the teachers to select which players go into each sport. Now, I find that pretty stupid because just because I like soccer or I like basketball or I like cricket or I like footy doesn't necessarily mean I am good at it. But if I put that as my first preference, I have a chance to play it. For me, the fact that we didn't have trials in our school just showed that this was an example of being inclusive and letting everyone involved in this. Now, I understand that this might be the only chance for someone to play this sport through this competition, but in the end of the day, it is a competition for a reason. You are competing with other schools, you're representing your school, and you're putting, I guess, your school's badge on the line while playing. And what frustrated me about our school is we had the most talented players for every respective sport, but because our school wanted to focus on having inclusion, making sure everyone participates, we never really achieved anything as a sporting team for the school. Which, if we were able to just try out, select the best players, and the best players went through, then we would have had a competing team in all our sports and possibly would have won most of the school competitions. And I really think it's important for schools to have competitions for sport, because the fact of the matter is the same concept applies when you go for university and you go for an interview. The smartest person or the person they deem fit will make the job or will make the course and get their job as well. Now, there's obviously politics involved and all that, but realistically, life is a competition. So setting that example in school was something that I wish happened in my school, and I don't think that is a negative thing as well. I do understand that it can build a lot of pressure, which we'll obviously get to, but at the same time, it teaches you life lessons to knock back from your failures. And we always talk about bouncing back up from your failures on this podcast. So it's something that I thought I'd bring up in terms of making people feel grounded, having that routine structure, but that also opportunity to achieve a goal and reach a goal as well. And that goes to my next example, is how sports can build that resilience identity and also community. So you get your community through your clubs. You're able to meet people from different cultures, different races, different beliefs, but everyone has the one common belief, and that is the love for the sport. And I find that really powerful. I feel like for me, as a sporting player, being able to be exposed into those different groups allowed me to kind of see people in a positive light. Unfortunately, with how the world is operating and the negativity and a lot of, I guess, issues with cultures, races, religions are occurring in our life, I feel like sport does a really good job in just throwing that down. Yes, there are cases where there are people that certainly do that thing, but it is open to anyone that wants to play. The game is open to anyone, and that's something that I found extremely powerful. I think if it wasn't for that exposure through sports, I wouldn't be able to understand and really respect different cultures, traditions, and all that. Because I did come from just a Catholic school, so I was really stuck with that one identity and one religion. So it was just good to have that opportunity as well, and that kind of also creates identity too. Your identity obviously comes from how you're raised and born, but it can also come through sport and being part of community as well, and that can build a very good overall mental health because it feels as though that you're inclusive and you're part of something as well. So being able to kind of bounce back from when you get knocked back on a trial, whether it's in school or not, or also in your community clubs where you try to obviously fight for that spot or position. If you do get knocked back, you're able to build from that and grow a bit of resilience and character to be able to try again and continue to try. Now, a lot of kids get knocked back down and feel discouraged, but it's something that will set them up for life in the future. They end up being, I guess, desensitized to it if they continue to build that resiliency and not. And then when I talked about trials in school, and I wanted to mention this again, it doesn't mean that kids or people should be excluded from those competitions, but there is a reason why there are levels of different competitions involved. You have an opportunity to play at lunchtime with your friends if you want to try in a sport. There are community groups and teams that play lower divisions where it's just focused on being involved and playing. And those things are great too. You don't necessarily have to be professional if you want to play the sport. There are many levels, opportunities, places for you to play a different sport and enjoy it as well. So that's something that is beneficial for the mental health as well. And probably the key thing as well is the physical health too. A good physical health will lead to a good mental health. And exercise is always something that is very good for the physical health. It gets you outside, it doesn't make you isolated, and it gives you a chance to socialize as well. So sport doesn't necessarily have to be a means of just exercising, though. It can be a means of getting goals and having community with other people too, which is great. But a physical side is always a positive too. So just talking on that, I think when it comes to being a part of a sport, you're able to get those things. So for those that are listening to this pod and are probably not engaged in any sporting or physical activity, if it's by the means of being physically active, that is great. But I find that a lot of people don't have the motivations to continue being physically active because they feel as though that they need to do it alone. What I would say to that is that if you enjoy being someone that wants to be along with a lot of people, there is opportunities to do that as well in many different groups and communities that have it. Like I talk about Western City right now, and I did shout them out before, but every Monday they have a group friendlies match, boys and girls mixed league, where everyone just plays for fun futsal. And a lot of people have improved from that, from what I've saw. Like I went there from now probably a few months back. It was like probably 3-4 months since I last made it to a friendly game. And I just saw massive improvements from players that couldn't even know the sport and knew nothing about it, but they just kept going every single week, built that confidence and actually improved. And through the social community and getting together with their friends, they were able to also improve their sporting skills as well. So it doesn't matter. You might think it's too late, but there's always time to improve in a sport, especially if you want to get into one. And it's also a good hobby as well. It's a good way to socialize with people, as I mentioned, but also improve your skills too. So that's something that I think is beneficial for all ages. Like obviously covered this at a young age, but again, for older people as well that are listening to this pod that probably don't have any communities or any sporting groups, if they do, this would be a perfect opportunity to go listen to this podcast, get some inspiration, go out there, find a club, find a community. There's so many online, there's so many places, and just be part of it. And it doesn't even need to be a sport itself. It can also be in fitness as well, health and fitness with those new groups where you've got Body Fit and I think F45. They all bring community together. So that's something to kind of look into there. All right, so now we're going to get into the dark side, and this is something that I really want to cover, and that's with the pressure that no one sees. So at the same time, we did talk about how it provides benefits, but there's always negatives when it comes to that. And sport isn't always the escape that we think it is. There is that performance anxiety, as mentioned, even in social competitions. People carry this weight, and it's like their worth is tied to how they play. And I can be a big example of this. For someone that's playing in a pretty competitive team at the moment, there are times where I've been put to the bench and I felt discouraged. But at the end of the day, it's part of the pressure of being in the sport and especially that level. So it's just really trying to understand where the situation is. And especially when you're in a good team, there were times where I did play and I felt like I had to perform or be perfect because that kind of brought into my worth. I'm not sure if it's the same for a lot of people, but when you guys playing in competitions, it feels as though if you're not performing, it's sort of like a character. It kind of tests your character and it defines your character, the sport. Which I have mentioned in the past, but that can also be a negative thing as well. There are times where I'm personally in front of goal, I just shit myself. I don't know why, but when I get near a goal, I don't have the composure to really score. And it's probably because of the anxiety I have in that moment and to understand how, I guess, important that chance is as well. Penalties, shocking at penalties. Every time I have taken a penalty, I just get full anxious. So anyone that takes a penalty and scores, especially those professionals, I have so much respect for because people say it's easy. For me, it's definitely not easy. So that's where performance anxiety comes in, and that happens to a lot of people, I feel, especially in professional level as well. Injuries and identity loss is another example. When you can't play, you feel like you lose who you are. There are a lot of players that are really attached to the sport, and one injury simply just puts them off. And being able to not be a part of the game and not being able to play really affects people's mental health. And you see it a lot in sport and in every sport, where you get that person that everyone talks about saying that if it wasn't for that certain injury, they could have potentially made it and been a professional player. There are a lot of professional players that actually go into the sport and they end up not doing as well because of the injuries they've copped as well. So just being able to fight that as well is so mentally taxing too. And it comes to a point where you rely so much on playing that one injury can literally take you out of what you know. And people think that just happens in a professional level, but that also happens in normal levels as well, in Sunday leagues, in community leagues, and in state leagues, for my example. Because when you think about it, we all have jobs. Some people don't, but a lot of people have jobs where they work for the sake of working. So as soon as their job is finished, all they're looking forward to is to go to their clubs, play a match, and train. And once an injury hits, you don't have that outlet at that gate to be able to escape the problems that you have. And you have to think and ponder about wishing that you were out on the pitch helping your team, especially when they're losing, especially if you're an important, pivotal person to the team. You find that can be a struggle as well, and it really affects your mental health. This one is probably more on a professional landscape, but the social media pressure is a massive one. And we spoke about this one. It's wild how much criticism athletes cop online. Imagine being like 17, 18 and seeing basically 500 comments on a bad performance you've had, or if you've done something. Like look at Saka, for example. He was only 19 years old. He missed a penalty for England to win the Euros and he copped racial abuse. Like for a 19-year-old to have that pressure, I just feel like it's so unfair and it can be very mentally taxing. Thank the Lord and thank, I guess, the way that sport has developed, that there is more focus on mental health with psychologists and people putting these athletes in the correct position. But again, it may not be in a social media, I guess, perspective for people to cop criticism, but internally you're giving criticism to yourself as well if you do something that ultimately costs the team. Because realistically, you don't want to be at fault for a team sport because it's already hard enough letting yourself down, but it's much harder when you let the next 10 people in your team for football perspective or your teammates down as well. And that's the hard thing to kind of go through. And that really affects your mental health as well. And to be honest, it also affects the mental health of teammates in another way as well. Like if someone makes a mistake too, yes, there's certain people that and I've been an example of this that get angry and feel angry about a player that's made a big mistake. It affects their mental health too because it also hurts them that they feel as though they've done everything they can to win. And it was something that was out of their control that essentially costed them the victory there. And it might not just be with a player, it might be with a coaching decision, it might be with a referee making the wrong decision. Those things can really affect the mental health of a player in any level of sport because in the end of the day, there are referees, there are coaches, there are players that cost you that. Especially, I remember one game where the referee cheated me. I wasn't happy, lost my head, got a red card out of emotion. And for me personally, it just felt as though that we were in a relegating side at the time, that nothing was going our way. We couldn't win games, we couldn't score goals, but we couldn't even get the help from the referees. And just all that kind of bobulated into my mind. And it just came out on the referee too, which I do deeply regret. But I guess that was a time that was a lot different, and I wasn't as mature as I think I am today. But it still gives you that, I guess, spill, and it really does affect your mental health overall. Then we go to the next point, which is the culture of toughing it out, and this is where kind of sport gets a bit toxic as well. The no pain, no gain mindset. There is this kind of misconception that you have to go through the struggles to, I guess, if you don't have pain, there's no gain. So I basically reiterated the quote, but I'm sort of backtracking here because I'm trying to explain it in a sense where obviously you need to fail to succeed, but there's also this conception that like if you don't actually suffer, you won't get better, and that's not necessarily always true. And if you have that pressure in your mind, then you're always going to think that you need to overcome what you're going through, and that can be very, very taxing as well. There is a stigma for asking around for help. And this is a big one, especially not as recent as it was, but this was obviously back in the day a very male dominated sport. And when you were part of a sporting team, especially back in my day when I was a bit younger as a kid, you weren't able to really talk about your mental health. You were just told to basically suck it up and continue going as well. And I think a lot of athletes had this issue, like they weren't able to really talk to anyone and for someone to really help them because in the back of their mind there was this stigma that they're a man, they have to man up, this is part of it, and everyone goes through it. And I think that's where a lot of players were affected as well. What I will say though is that there is balance to this because there is a time where there are moments where you need to tough it out and harden up, but there are sometimes a lot of moments where you do need that support and love, and it's just finding the balance as well. And it's great that sport is starting to implement more help when it comes to the mental health of athletes and stuff because back in the day there wasn't nothing that exists, but still being a male dominant sport, there is that still lingering around, I think, as well. There is also misunderstandings from coaches and teammates, especially in an amateur perspective, I would say as well, given that obviously professionally that becomes part of your life and stuff, and it becomes your life. But in an amateur perspective or semi-pro perspective, you have your other life as well, your work, your career, and those are the things that you're supposed to really have your focus on. And then your sport is meant to be an escape, as I mentioned before. But when coaches or teammates start spraying you, giving you shit, not really understanding how your day was before you've rocked up the training, it can be very taxing as well. And it feels like no one really understands what you're going through because in reality, you're not with these people every day. You're probably only with them once, twice, three times a week. And it can become very mentally taxing too, to get your coach and your teammate just criticizing you when you've had a bad day at work. Because let's face it, not everyone comes to training feeling 100%. And I would say for athletes as well, if they go through their personal lives, if their relationships too. But topping that on for amateurs with relationships as well, and certain thing that happens, and then they have to come to training and give 100% can be mentally draining as well. And that's what happens when you're in competitive sports. These are things that come along the way. And that's something that I wanted to emphasize as well. So when we are quick to criticize athletes and probably our teammates as well sometimes, and this is a thing that I have to say to myself as well, I have to be honest, is something to consider and really understand that we don't really know what's happening in their head at the time. So it's something that is starting to get a bit more recognized, but I think sport can do a better job in understanding, and people in sport can do a better job in understanding that people go through more shit than their sports. It's good to see people like Simone Biles and Kevin Love speaking up, and that does change things. It does impact the mental health space. It does create a bit of a positive environment, and it throws awareness on the situation that is occurring and the issues of mental health and how it impacts athletes. It makes them more relatable to everyday people and helps us understand that they go through stuff as well. Obviously, the social media, journalisms, or journalists and people glorify these athletes, but again, they are human too, as I've mentioned before in the past as well. The people that do a terrible job in this is the AFL journalists. I find the AFL journalists probably the worst journalists in the world, from what I've heard. I watch a lot of American sports. I watch a lot of UK sports from the Premier League and European sports as well. I'm trying to get into Spanish media as well. But what I will say is that I think Australian news has the most toxicity when it comes to player abuse and missed allegations as well. And it's really sad because AFL players, they do make an honest wage. They don't make millions and millions and millions of dollars like American athletes and like UK athletes and people around the world. They at most probably make, well, Cosy Pickett's the highest. He's probably making 12 million in 9 years. So a little over $1 million a year, which in theory, yes, is a lot of money, but it's still an honest wage. It's not something that's significantly larger than the average person. So they are still seen in the light as professional athletes, yes, but they're not really living the lavish life of a professional athlete. So for them to get the same kind of journalistic abuse that athletes that are making billions of dollars are or multi-millions of dollars are, I don't think it's quite fair. And I think we need to humanize them as well, especially given that they don't have the same kind of celebrity status as them too. No one deserves it, and I'm not saying that, but it's just something that I've just noticed within Australian media too, and it's something that I wish could be fixed up as well. Um, Now we're going to kind of look into, I guess, the things that are changing and what can we do better as well to kind of also always impact and improve mental health. The thing that I've mentioned as well, there is more awareness in clubs and schools. There are more mental health professionals in elite teams, and big names are sharing their struggles. And I think this builds character in players. Being able to understand a kid's mind will help them develop better and make them get to the next level. And I think the improvement overall is getting better. There is more understanding going along the way. If you're a coach or someone that is part of leadership, it's always good to check on your players to see if your player's okay or not. Especially kids, they always need the guidance as well. I find that I try to talk to the kids that I coach as much as I can, just to make sure that they're feeling better and they're feeling confident about their football as well. And I find that very important. I do come from a football background, so I do coach football as well, but really try to implement life lessons too. I find very important because in the end of the day, the kids are going to be exposed to more things than football. They're going to be exposed to life, and that's something that I find really important as well. And I still think it's important for adults as well that are over 18 to really try have that friendship relationship with the players too, and really feel how they're feeling as well. And the sport culture just needs to be a bit more better when it comes to just trying to seek perfectionism. I think it's important that human connection and empathy is noted in sports, and it's better than just trying to have a perfect player, because that's not going to happen. And again, as I mentioned on previous episodes, it's great to embrace our imperfections in our sport, and that's what makes our sport relatable, and that's why everyone loves it too. So being able to understand that people are going to make mistakes, shit happens, and we move on from it. But basically, from finishing up this conversation, I don't have all the answers, as I always say, but it just starts with, I think, being honest. I think honesty is the best policy. Really saying where you're at, really understanding where you are in your mind and how you feel for certain things will go a long way. For anyone that is listening to this, again, it's always better just to say how you feel and express your concerns, your frustrations to someone that you trust, but also to your sporting teams. So then you can get the best help that you need. If you hold it in, no one is going to help you and no one is going to understand what you're going through. And you're just going to continue to feel this way. If you ever feel pressure, burnout, or sports messing with your head as well, you're not the only one, and it's always okay to talk about it. I'm talking about it here. I've gone through so many mental barriers in sport. As much as I do love it, there are times where I hate it. There are times where I don't even want to train, or there are times where I don't want to play. But if I do speak to people and have friends around, coaches and everything, and to talk about, it makes it a lot more easier for me to go to my sporting events when I'm feeling like this. But it'd be great for you guys to jump in the conversation and really share your sporting stories, and tell me if this really kind of gave you a bit of perspective on the mental side of sports. I would love to hear everyone's personal stories. I'm sure that everyone plays sport at any level, so no level will be judged here on the Huddle Within. I want to keep the chat going and I guess see where you guys are at mentally with your kind of sport minds and how it impacts you. We didn't really talk too much into fandom. Well, I'll quickly wrap that up because I think fandom is important. Just understand that you're not in control of your sporting teams. As much as you want your sporting teams to win, as much as you want to defend them by the sword, as much as people are probably going to criticize you for your sport team losing, I find that if you don't care as much and show care and just embrace the difficulties and the fact that you've lost, it will be better for your mental health as well. Because at the end of the day, sports fandom comes in waves and flows. There are times when your team is good and there are times when your team is terrible. Listen to Gattuso's quote for that reference too. Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit. If you live with that life and that motto, you'll feel better being a sports fan as well. And it becomes less taxing for you as well to your mental health, because in the end of the day, you can't do shit. You can only support and be there, and that's probably the best form of support you can do. And eventually one day, there are some teams that don't win anything in their lifetime, but you're living, in our life expectancy is around 70 years old. You're living at least 70 years. So you have 70 years to witness at least one of your teams, if you go for multiple teams, win a trophy or a title in some stage. Like look at Newcastle, look at Crystal Palace, look at Leicester. They'll be very happy with winning one trophy in their lifetime. But anyway, it's been another episode of the Huddle Within podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in to this episode again. I will catch you guys on the next one. Cheers. So that's a wrap for this week's episode of the Huddle Within podcast. I appreciate you for tuning in and being part of this community where we go beyond the game and into what really matters. If this episode resonated with you, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who sees sports just the way that we do. And hey, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on my social medias, which will be linked below. Send in your thoughts and even be part of a future episode. Until next time, keep that passion alive, stay in the huddle, and remember, it's always deeper than the game. Cheers.